When you hear the name PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, you probably think of, well, animal rights. It's right there in the name. But behind their famous mission is this shocking paradox that's been sparking outrage for years. So let's get into it. Why is an organization dedicated to protecting animals so often accused of killing them?
Let's start with the number. 51,010. This is at the very heart of the whole controversy. According to PETA's critics, who've compiled official state records, this is the known total of dogs and cats killed at PETA's own shelter in Norfolk, Virginia, just since 1998.
I mean, that number just seems to fly in the face of everything PETA supposedly stands for. So how do we even begin to make sense of this? To really get the full picture, we've got to look at this from 3 different angles. First, the case that PETA's critics have built. Second, PETA's own, very deeply held philosophy. And finally, the massive public relations war that's clouding this entire debate. Okay, so first up, let's unpack the case against PETA. This isn't just some vague accusation floating around the internet. It's a case built on public records, on testimony from people who were there, and, some really tragic individual stories.
So this is data that PETA itself submitted to the state of Virginia for 2024. They euthanized 875 dogs and almost 1,300 cats. But look at the adoption numbers. They found new homes for only 23 cats. 23. That's an adoption rate of just over 1%. You can see why, for their critics, this is pretty much the smoking gun. It's proof, they say, that PETA's facility just isn't operating like a traditional shelter that's focused on adoption.
And the case against PETA gets really personal when you hear stories like Maya's. She was a beloved family Chihuahua. Surveillance footage actually captured PETA staff taking her right off her family's porch, and she was killed that very same day. Now, this was a direct violation of Virginia's 5-day hold period. That's a law specifically designed to give owners a chance to find their lost pets. The family sued, and PETA ended up settling for $49,000. But get this, during the lawsuit, they argued that Maya's life was essentially worthless.
This view from the inside is backed up by whistleblowers. Former employees have painted a really chilling picture. They've alleged that they were told to get their hands on as many animals as possible, sometimes even by misleading the owners, knowing full well that most were just going to be euthanized. One former employee even described a kill room, saying that once an animal went in there, even healthy kittens brought in to be spayed, they never came back out.
So how in the world does PETA justify any of this? Well, from their perspective, it's not killing. It's a mercy. They've even called it a gift to end an animal's suffering. And to really understand that, you have to look at the worldview of its co-founder, Ingrid Newkirk.
Newkirk's entire philosophy was basically forged in the fire of 1970s animal shelters. Back then, she saw just appalling cruelty and neglect. And her response was, well, it was radical. She started euthanizing animals herself, because she truly believed a quick death was more compassionate than a life of suffering. She's even said, I must have killed 1,000 of them. And that core belief, that death is better than suffering, became the ideological foundation for PETA.
And this belief actually extends to PETA's official stance on owning pets at all. They argue against the very idea of having pets. They say that the selfish desire to possess animals is the real root cause of all this suffering from things like overbreeding, neglect, and abandonment. So in their worldview, the entire system is broken from the start.
And right here, this is probably the most critical distinction you need to understand. In a postcard to someone who criticized her, Newkirk was incredibly blunt. PETA does not advocate for an animal's right to life. This really is the philosophical chasm that separates PETA from pretty much every other animal welfare group. For PETA, the #1 priority isn't preserving life at all costs. It's bringing an absolute end to suffering.
And you can see exactly how this philosophy plays out in the real world. Back in 2014, PETA's Virginia shelter and the Lynchburg Humane Society, which is a no-kill shelter in the very same state, they took in about the same number of animals. But the outcomes, they couldn't be more different. PETA's adoption rate was less than 1%. Lynchburg's was 94%. It's just a really stark illustration of 2 completely different approaches to animal welfare. But there's a third piece to this puzzle, and it's a huge one. PETA argues that this whole PETA kills animals narrative isn't just people being critical. They say it's a deliberate, well-funded disinformation campaign that's been engineered by their corporate enemies. So it turns out the primary source for a lot of the anti-PETA stuff, including that popular PETA Kills Animals website, is a group called the Center for Consumer Freedom, or CCF.
Now, the CCF isn't some grassroots animal welfare group. It's actually a front group run by a professional DC lobbying and PR firm, and their whole mission is to target organizations that, in their own words, antagonize food producers.
And their strategy is really a masterclass in modern PR. First, the CCF gets public documents from Virginia, that same data we just looked at. Then they package it all up on their website, they write press releases, and they start pitching the story to journalists. By doing this, they become both the source of the information and the main amplifier. It creates a narrative that looks like an independent, unbiased investigation when it's anything but.
And the connections here run pretty deep. The guy who actually created the PETA Kills Animals campaign for the CCF, a man named David Martisco, he went on to become the U.S. political editor for the Daily Mail, which is a massive global news platform. This all raises some really serious questions about how these PR campaigns can be sort of laundered through the media to shape public opinion on a huge scale.
So, when you strip away the PR war and you get past all the spin coming from both sides, you're left with this really fundamental and maybe unresolvable ethical question about what it actually means to be humane.
On one side, you've got the no-kill movement. They believe every adoptable animal deserves a chance and that euthanasia is the absolute last resort, only for the truly suffering. And then, on the other side, you've got PETA's position, that in a world with rampant overpopulation and cruelty, a peaceful death is a tragic necessity, and it's the final act of kindness you can offer. This isn't just a debate about shelter policies, it's a deep, deep conflict of core beliefs.
In the end, this PETA paradox doesn't really offer any easy answers, does it? It forces a really difficult question on all of us. In a world with millions of unwanted animals, where do you draw the line between mercy and killing? What is the truly humane choice? And the answer, it seems, is nowhere near as simple as we'd like it to be.